Hi, so this week we're actually going to look at failures. Failures is something so fundamental to our lives, but if we can actually learn how to both have the failures but learn and conquer them, it adds an amazing amount of value to our lives. And I'm going to explain exactly why. And I'm going to show you 4 points, that's just 4 points, on how you can actually learn and conquer failures. If you're like me, quite often you get that knot in your stomach, even just thinking about that hard task ahead. And you know, the knot, the wave of panic is like, I can't do this. Of course I can. And you think you're over it again, and again, it sort of sweeps over us again, and the knot is there, and the butterflies in the tummy, and all those thoughts about, oh, can I do it? And what happens if it doesn't work? And what do people say? And oh, maybe I'm not ready for this. Well, the beauty is that's actually how you're designed to operate. That's the way everyone's designed to operate. It's because we've got this little drug kicked in, adrenaline, and the adrenaline is pumping around us. And that's where we feel the knots in our stomach and all those waves of panic and things. It's our body going, I'm ready to do something. And quite often what we do is we feel that fear and we think, oh, that's a fear. It's more than that. It's a fear, a fight or flight. So it's actually getting ready for action. And quite often what we need to do is just think about our fear of failure in a more proactive way. Yes, we've got all these feelings and everything, but just so does everyone else. And we've always had them, and it's part of who we are. If you think about an athlete before the race, so you watch the athletes and they bless themselves and they've got little routines. And these are guys who, you know, they do this 2 or 3 times a week. They have a race, they either win or they lose. But yet they are always trying to cope with their own fears themselves too. So it's not unusual. Even professional sports stars have the same fears that we have. So let's get used to it. And I'm going to show you how to both learn from them and how to conquer them. So the secret of thinking about failure is a simple question I've got for you. Would you rather, and this is not a hypothetical question, this is actually what you're doing in your brain all the time, but would you rather 1 success or 10 successes? Now, here's the catch. To have 1 success, you're going to have 9 failures, right? So you're going to have 1 success, and you're going to have 9 times you get it wrong, okay? But here's the flip side. For the 9 successes, you're going to have 90 failures, okay? Because what you're going to do is for every time you get 1 success, you're going to have 9 failures. So your choice in life is, well, do you say, I don't want to have too many failures, so I'm going to limit myself to 9 failures, and I'm going to have the 1 success? Or do you say, you know, I've only got 1 life. I want to have at least 9 successes, and that means I'm going to have 90 failures. So that's the question that you've been asked all the time. And one of the things to consider as well is it's even stranger than that. Some people say, listen, 1 failure is too many. But that's not the way how life works. The thing is, you were always going to have failures as long as you're progressing and moving forward. It's how you learn. And that's the first thing I want to talk to you about is the L, and the L is for learning. Failure is the way we learn. We learn more from when things don't go right than when things actually go right. And the secret of actually learning from it is every time is to consider what's actually happened. So when you think about a failure that you had, your objective is not to keep making the same failure. Your objective is to actually go and learn from it. You've been given this amazing opportunity, a case study, a real-life case study that you know all the information and facts about. This is, in terms of educating yourself, this is gold dust. This is just amazing. And you've just got to ask yourself 4 simple questions, that's all. The first is, well, what was it that you're expecting to happen? So before you actually went and had this failure, what were you expecting to happen? What did success look like? The second thing is, what actually happened? So what is it that you're calling failure? What actually happened? The third thing to then ask yourself is, well, why did that happen? Why did I not achieve the result I was actually looking for? What were the factors that got involved in that? So what did you do to contribute to that different outcome? What did other people do? What were other factors that you just hadn't considered at the time that actually, when it started, it actually made a big difference? And the fourth thing is to take it all together and review it. And to actually look objectively and say, next time I want this to happen, what am I going to do differently? And that's the way we all learn. And that's the most efficient way of learning, an effective way of learning, because we've actually done it ourselves. We've experienced the ups, the highs and the lows, And we've got all that information to figure out exactly what it was that contributed to success or failure. And it's often through the failure that we realize the most important thing was something we didn't even consider. So we'll incorporate that into our next go around. And that's not to say that the next time we do it, we're going to be successful either. But at least we've got a hint on how to actually go about it and do this. One of the things that Chris Hadfield, the astronaut guy, he was in Dublin there a few weeks ago, and he had an amazing insight into failures and how failure is part and parcel of the space program. And he shared, NASA is great, everything is analysed, thousands and thousands of engineers, so everything is measured and analysed and figured out. And what they'd done was they'd figured out the risk of Chris Hadfield actually getting into space the first time. And he had a 1 in 38 chance of dying on his first trip. And even he was saying that was a high risk job. But his attitude was amazing, because as he was saying to himself, or saying to the audience, was that this is part and parcel of doing any new venture, is that there's always a risk of failure. So they calculated to 1 in 38. But after he had actually gone through that space launch and gotten through the initial atmosphere, that's where the biggest risk apparently is. All the feedback from the things that didn't quite work, and as he said, there were thousands of things didn't quite work. If something like a spaceship getting into the atmosphere, there's about 1 million problems that could happen. And every one of them is maybe a 1 in 100 chance of actually happening. And as long as the problems are small, you're fine. It's only when you have too many small problems, or small problems become big problems, or a big problem occurs, that things get to the 1 in 38 chance. But what they did was they analysed all of those little problems and they started fixing them. So the next time he went into space, he didn't share the odds, but he said they're a hell of a lot better than 1 in 38. And the next time they did it again, they learned from the learnings on his second attempt and the third attempt, and that's how it keeps on going. Airlines are exactly that. So the initial airlines, pilots didn't last very long. It was a very dangerous game. But what happened over time is they started learning from the failures. And the airline industry, even now, every failure, they've got the black box recorders in there learning everything that happens. When a failure does occur, not that they want a failure to occur, but when and if a failure does occur, they analyze everything about it. They piece it all together and they figure out exactly what it was that caused that failure and how could that failure be prevented in the future. That's learning, that's key. And that's what you need to be thinking. Those 4 really simple questions that I shared with you. So go and get them done. The second thing is to think about failure as incremental progress. It's like a scorecard. Incremental progress. So remind me next time not to have a headline that long. It takes too long to write it down. So what do I mean by incremental progress? It's your scorecard. So if you're going to do something, you want to be able to say, listen, I know I'm progressing because so far I've had 5 failures. That means I know I've had 4 really good learning experiences, and on the back of that I've changed and developed and moved on, so that the next time I do time number 6 is going to be even better. I don't know if I'm going to be successful just yet, but you know what? My chance of success will be a lot better than that first time around. And incremental progress is really important to life. If you think of nature itself, it's all about incremental progress. So the way we've evolved has all been down to little changes that either, little tiny changes, genetic changes, and they either work and we inherit them, and that's who me and you, who we are now, are the result of all those little changes, or they don't work and it just dies out. So incremental progress is really important. Another great example is, James Dyson. So he invented the bagless vacuum cleaner. So he's got a great quote. He calls his failures a very great engineering word. If you're an engineer like I am, we use the word prototype. So prototype is where it's a failure. We know it's going to fail, right? But it's a hell of a lot better than saying we created this failure. We created a prototype. But he created 5,127 prototypes before he had his production-ready model. That's 5,127. And the best thing is, every one of those, he had all the results of it recorded down. And this was just figuring out how the air rotates around and how the dirt will fall out, and what the best shapes and angles and sizes. 5,127. Now that is incremental progress. Anyone else trying to recreate that, Dyson's able to say, listen, I know 5,126 ways that it doesn't work as well as as this one. So that's the way to look upon it. Failure is your scorecard of progress. The third thing that I want you to think about is failure is fundamental, right? Absolutely fundamental. It is the only way that things actually achieve. So you need to be planning for failure. There's no point going out there and thinking, I'm going to do something and it's going to magically work, right? That's naivety. So what I want you to think about is, when you're going to do something, how are you going to cope with the failure? How are you going to make sure that when you fail, you learn from it? How you make an incremental progress, and then that you go and build that into your next event. Because failure is going to happen. It happens everywhere. In all the best achievements, there's a whole litany of failures that happened first. But the beauty about most people, when they stand up and say what a success they are, they sort of forget about this. They go, well, I didn't really have 5,127 failures. It's only people like Dyson and Edison, another person. He quite happily said he had 10,000 failures before his light bulb came about. But most people just pretend they suddenly had this amazing success. It doesn't happen. You have these failures. Everyone has these failures. And it's how you deal with them. And there are a number of strategies for dealing with them. So the strategies that I'd like you to consider are building in failure each and every day into what you're going to do. And that means accepting that you are going to fail. So is it good to bet the whole house on the roulette wheel? Or is it good to take a small step or multiple small steps that actually, if you lose them, you can wind back on and learn and move forward? I want to stress highly that betting the whole house on something, having this grand scheme, this grand project, this grand plan that you're only ever going to test when you finally go live with it or finally try and implement it, that is so risky. So risky, because failure is fundamental. Things fail. The much better strategy is to figure out, okay, I have a great plan. How do I break it down so that I figure out how to test this plan? How do I test the important things in it? How do I do little experiments? How do I make sure that when this big plan happens, I have a litany of incremental progress, so I can show all the steps along the way where I learned and rebuilt it into this plan. And that is things like that. There's a whole industry now starting up around different philosophies about making things happen quicker based on failure. So Lean Startup, if you ever read Eric Rice's book, it's all about how a company can start up really quickly and be pretty comfortable that the product they bring to market will actually be successful. And it's not about 3 or 4 years of product development and having all the best brains working through stuff and coming out going, da-da. It's the exact opposite. It's about figuring out, okay, I'm going to bring out a product to the market. How do I get something with sticky tape on and that's good enough that someone will go, oh, I roughly get your idea and I sort of like it, but you need to change this, this, and this. And he's heavily saying, listen, if you can do this in a week, to have your perfect product will take 4 years and multi-billions. Whereas in a week, you realize, oh, actually, these 3 things that were going to be in your perfect product, the customer doesn't want them. So a week later, you can get rid of those and back to the customer and say, listen, what about this product? And the customer, well, yeah, but I'd like it in red. Okay? So in 2 weeks, you've learned through failure what a customer will actually buy versus this amazing plan that never hit reality and you never allowed it to potentially fail. So think about everything you do. How do you quickly test? How do you do quick surveys? How do you ask? How do you get experts on a call? So whenever you're doing something, test your ideas, put them to failure, speak about them, talk to colleagues, but don't hold your ideas in for this grand launch, because typically when you have this grand launch and grand plan and you haven't allowed the criticism of others to affect your ideas, you'll come up with a red herring. You'll come up with that multi-million-pound flop. And that's not for you. We don't want you to be there. So the fourth thing to think about is experimentation. And experimentation is about planning and making those little steps again and again. And making sure that what we're trying to do is not experiment for a successful outcome. We're going to try and experiment for a failure outcome, because we're going to try and show incremental progress. We're going to say, listen, I know it's not right, but can you tell me what it's failing on? Just like that product again, they'll go this, this, and this. you typically learn way more by presenting something for a failure than you do for a success. And to give you an example of this, okay, so if you've got a field full of sheep, okay, and you can only see some of them, and you want to know, are they all white? Well, there's two ways you can do it. You can have a look and you can put in a big experiment that's going to say, okay, I'm going to test each and every single sheep and I'm going to check to see if they're white or not. And when I get to I'm going to test to see if they're white. When I get to the end, I've got 1,000 white sheep, I know they're all white. There's another way of looking at it, which is, well, rather than look to see if they're all white, let's have a quick check to see if any are not white. Any are not white. And we have a quick look, oh yeah, there's 5. Straight away, by looking for the failure, it's much quicker to go and figure out, is your assumption correct or not? And just like the example of the product failure, by going out saying, is this good enough? Looking for the failure, we very quickly figure out what's wrong rather than try and look for the success, saying, isn't this wonderfully successful? So whenever you're looking to learn and to create an experiment, make sure you're looking not just for the positives, but the negatives as well, because often it is trying to look for the negatives. That's where you make the most impact. I remember a time where, this is amazing, my boss reported to a very, 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 very senior boss, and he got an email through one day saying, listen, I need you to make this payment, it's a multi-million-dollar payment, and I need you to do it now, basically. But the message was anything but clear. And it was one of those tasks that had to be done straight away. So he came to me because I was the one that'd have to go and make it. Going, Keith, obviously, because he didn't know what to do, that was now my problem, boss. And so I looked at it, and again, I hadn't a clue. And so I tried to phone him, couldn't get through. Secretary said, oh, he's on email, but you can't get him on phone. So emailed him saying, I don't understand, what do you need me to do? Another message came back, still gobbledygook. Back clarify, back gobbledygook again. So 3 gobbledygook messages came back. And I'm sure that the guy thought he was being really succinct and clear, but it made no sense. So what it did was, my boss was with me and said, okay, we're going to rearrange this. We're going to send a note and I'm going to say, I'm going to make this payment to this person at this time, just like you asked for, right? Sent it. It was probably about 10 seconds later, I got a little email back going, no. And then about 25 seconds after that was, it's not this, it's this. So we spent so much time trying to work and trying to look for the successful answer from him. It was only when we presented the obviously wrong answer that he came back and clarified it, and we were perfect and we were able to go and make that. So always think about, it's not always about trying to prove the success when you're trying to learn. It's often it's proving the failure. And that's why failure is so important. It's part and parcel of who we are. It's part and parcel of how successful we're going to be. We need to learn from it. We need to treat it as a scorecard, as I said. We need to recognize it's always going to be there. And we got to recognize that we're going to use both sides of the experimentation. We're going to do things that are definitely going to fail, and we're going to be well happy with it. And we're going to do things that maybe they'll be successful. We'll be even happier with it. So what I want you to take from this is don't fear failure. Failure is exactly what we should be doing. And this is your secret to actually going and making the most of it.